Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to CINEKYD Theater. I'm Bob Clark, the Executive Director of CINEKYD Enterprises Incorporated, and I'm so pleased that you could be with us for the beginning of our brand new television season. During the weeks to come, you'll be entertained by the young people who are members of our organization. They actually produce this television show, and you'll see quite a bit of talent. Our youngsters come from about 40 communities. They range in age from 7 to 18 years, and they're responsible for writing and producing the different segments that comprise CINEKYD Television Theater. Tonight, we have a rare opportunity for you. Some weeks ago, we were visited by a movie star, Miss Penny Singleton, known to most of you as Blondie. For quite a few years during the golden age of Hollywood, she produced an astounding array of Blondie films with Mr. Arthur Lake. Penny visited with us and shared her experiences as a starlet, a star, and told the kids what it was like in the old days to work in Hollywood.
First of all, there wasn't motion pictures, they were silent pictures, and I didn't know about that. And also, we didn't have radio, we didn't have television, we didn't have the mediums we have today, and I was just so interested in learning how to do things like dancing and singing, and even the acting part of it hadn't entered my mind yet, because the dancing, I wanted my ballet teacher, Miss Kalanova, I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be able to do the ballet dancing in at Al White's dancing school. And of course, I was younger than Matthew and the young people who met me today, Jimmy, and the tap dancing and the soft shoe dancing and everything. And I was so interested in doing it the way they wanted me to do it and being perfect in what I was doing, that fame or becoming anybody important, I just wanted to do what I did very, very well as I could. And when I did it, I was very proud of that. I had a certain pride in it, you know. But as far as going on and on and on, no, I think at that age, I couldn't entertain that kind of thinking. I think my mother did, but I didn't.
Long before Blondie, you became involved in the world of entertainment. Would you share with our audience what happened prior to 1938 when you began the Blondie series? You were very active on stage, and your career already had achieved a notable amount of success.
Yes, I had been very lucky, and I had been making gains in musical comedy and gains in the Broadway extravaganzas at the Winter Garden while I was still going to professional children's school. I started in vaudeville when I was about 6 or 7 years of age, and that's pretty early age, you know. And of course, in those days, the children in the theater, especially in vaudeville, which was a kind of family entertainment. Now, when I say family entertainment, I mean that what you saw on the stage was always very, very excellent and entertainment, and it was always geared to the families, because the families were the ones who patronized the vaudeville houses. So we never had to worry about something being off-key in a vaudeville show of any kind. However, with the children, we would be in these little kiddie acts, Kid Cabaret and things like that. Now, in my act, there was Milton Berle and Raymond Guion and myself and some of the children from Philadelphia, Dolly Truxas and Margaret Langhorne, and a whole lot of us, you know, that you probably would never know their names. From vaudeville, I went into the Schuberts. I was signed with the Schuberts. My parents signed the contract because they were my guardians and I wasn't of age. And from the Schuberts, I graduated into Schwab Mandel's good news and then follow through. And I co-starred with Jack Haley, who was my friend for over 50 years. He died recently. And the Haley family, we'd been very close for over 50 years. And so while all of this success was going on and I was making my mark, I was so busy working and being happy and enjoying what I was doing that it never occurred to me that there was any kind of fame. I knew I was getting billing. I was working for that. We work for that, and we're very proud of that. Billing is when our name is out front and in which position it's in, and that's sort of our rating. That's a performer's rating, like a child gets a report card, A, B, B, C, C, you know. And if you're F, you're N Company. But anyway, I don't know. Of course, I'm talking about a kind of show business that used to be, that is no more. It's entirely different now. The children of the vaudevillians would take over, but when they were in their tender years, they would either be in a convent or in a military school while the mother and father were touring along the way in vaudeville. And then they would have a break and they would come home for several weeks, and they always tried to be home for the holidays or have the children with them on tour for the holidays. But I was very lucky because as part of my tuition to the woman who took care of me in the act, because my mother couldn't travel with me. My mother, I had a sister and a brother, and she lived here in Philadelphia. And so she couldn't go with me on the road, so Mrs. Call would take care of me. And Mrs. Call had Sis and Bud Call, her son and daughter, in the show. And he did imitations of Joe Frisco and Pat Rooney, and I was the understudy for that. And sometimes when Bud Call was sick and I had to fill in for him and do my own numbers too, I was bumping into myself in the wings, getting changed and getting out in time to do Pat Rooney Jr. and Frisco. But anyway, I would get into the theater early in the morning because I had to take care of the wardrobe and straighten out the dressing rooms. I had to earn my way, you know. You don't get anything for nothing. You have to work for everything. So I would earn my way by getting to the theater, and I would see that the boys' pants and costumes were all pressed and the jackets were all nice. And I would wash out the things that would have to be washed out, like the socks or the hose or whatever we were using for the girls, and press the costumes and hang them all up, and they'd all be nice and fresh. And we used to go to the 5 and 10, and I don't know whether you remember, they used to have little white canvas sandals at the 5 and 10, and they had kind of a white patent leather heel. They were like Mary Jane's with the straps, you know, and they had the white patent leather over the, it was like oilcloth over the wooden heel. And we used to get a bottle of gilt, bottle of silver, and we used to paint the canvas so that it would look like Silver Kid or Gold Kid, because we couldn't afford to buy Gold Kid or Silver Kid dancing shoes, you know. And then we had trouble getting it to stick on the patent leather, so we used to cut the patent leather off and just paint over the heel. But I had to make sure that the cracks, because when you were dancing, it would come off like little bits of puff smoke, you know. So it just had to watch the cracks, and you had to scrub them with the brush so that you didn't get too much, so that when you were dancing, the dust wasn't flying all over the stage. So it was during those periods when I would get into the theater in the morning and get everything set up that I would meet the other performers and the stars on the bill who would come in to get their mail. Now, the husband and wife act, who would have a daughter in a convent or a son in a military school, they lavished on me all the attention that they would lavish on their own if they had them with them. So I was taken out to lunch, and I was taken out to dinner, and they made costumes for me, and of course I was supplying the whole act with all varieties of costumes that were made for me. I couldn't wear them all, you know, but inside of about a 2 months tour, say I would have about 5 costumes that these women would make for me, you know. Well, they were shared. They were in the act. The other children in the act, the other girls wore them too, you know. And that was quite a saving for us. But I have to tell you about the children's acts. The children's acts were like the dog acts. They were always the opening act or the second act, or else they never put the children on to close the show, because that would be too late. So we were either on first or on second. And it was always the desire of every child in vaudeville, the Mecca, the temple to play when you were in vaudeville, which was before musical comedy, by the way. Musical comedy didn't come in until the 20s, I think. And it was the ambition of every child who was talented, who was in show business, to play the Palace. That was the theater. If you played the Palace, oh, that was the greatest thing that could ever happen to you. Well, one day Mrs. Cowell and the women in the act received a call from Folly Marcus, who was an agent for the Kid Act, and he said, I want you to get the children ready because they're going to open at the Palace tomorrow. Well, I'm telling you, we were so thrilled and so excited about opening at the Palace Theater. What had happened was the dog act was sick. So they had to get something very, very quickly, and so they decided they would put the Kitty Cabaret on for the opening act. Well, I'm telling you, we went out and we were so nervous, but we were so proud, and the audience loved us because 6, 7, 8 years of age, you know, all these little tykes, and and we were singing modern songs, and we had our own little dances and things, and we were so professional, you know, we would bow to each other and bow to the maestro, and we had been taught very well professional etiquette. That's also a lost art today, but we were taught that. And so everything was fine, and we were so thrilled, and we thought, oh, and we were telling everybody, come to the Palace Theater to see us. 2 days later, the dog act was better, and we were out, and the dog act opened the show. I know I've gone by way of Kensington to answer your question.
That's perfectly all right.
You know, Philadelphians really love to talk.
Yes, they do. From stage to movies.
Well, that was kind of an accident. I didn't go from, yes, I did go from the stage to the movies, but the elders in the business, after musical comedies and, and vaudeville to musical comedy, after musical comedy, the elders in the business said, now, Dorothy, you really have to get some stock experience. You have to now get some polish and learn how to be an actress. And so they suggested that I take a spell with a good stock company. So I did. I went up to Ivoryton, Connecticut, Milton Stiefel Stock Company. I picked out the best one because Katharine Hepburn had experience up there, Margaret Sullivan was up there, Henry Fonda was up there, Blanche Yerka. There were a lot of the outstanding stars in live theater who were going into motion pictures who had served their apprenticeship up at Ivoryton. So I went over to see Milton Stiefel, and it seems that he had a couple of people who had been in musical comedies up there the season before. So when I went in to see him, and the appointment was arranged through some friends, he said, oh yes, Dorothy, he said, musical comedy? I said, yes. But I said, I would like to know how to become an actress now, and I would like to get some professional experience and polish. And you have the best stock company, and I hope that you will let me participate in it. And he said, well, he said, I don't know. He said, musical comedy. He said, they're always ready to go into a song and a dance. And I said, well, I won't do that if you'll help me. So anyway, he said, all right, all right. Now, I was getting kind of nervous because it didn't seem that the interview was going so well, and he didn't want anybody who had been in musical comedies, you know. He was obviously had some troubles with them. So anyway, he said, well, he said, everybody reads, so he said, you read. So he handed a book over to me, and I looked at it, and up at the top it said Alien Corn. And I didn't know, it rang a bell, but I didn't know what it was. But it was a black page. We call a lot of print and a long speech that's all printed out. We call that a black page. That means that's a long speech. Well, this was several pages long. And so he said, he said, read that for me. And so I said, all right. And I didn't know what I was reading, so I just started to read. And I thought, oh, it's going on, and I looked over at him, and he had his feet up on the desk, and he was back with his eyes closed, and I thought, oh, he's going to sleep, you know, but I kept on reading and reading. And finally I got through the 2 pages and turned the page. And he said, the feet came down, and he said, "Did you see the play?" And I said, "No, I never saw the play." And he said, well, he said, that was Catherine Cornell's big speech in Alien Corn. Now, I'm Irish, and I'm from South Philadelphia, so I jumped up and I said, "Well, that's fine." I said, "You call Kit Cornell on the phone and ask her if she'll come over here and do the varsity drag for you." I thought that I had really, you know, ruined myself. And I started to walk out, and he said, no, wait a minute, Dorothy, wait a minute." So I stopped, and he said, "That was really pretty good." He said, "Yes," he said, "I think you'll be with me. But Henry Hull sent me a woman, and I told her she could be the leading lady. Her name is Hala Stoddard." And Henry Hull, of course, at that time was an outstanding, legitimate performer, and he was a big star. And so he had sent this young girl, Hala Stoddard, and to be the leading lady for Milton Stiefel's Iryton Players. So Milton said, "You're both excellent," and he said, "You'll both read for the same parts, and whichever one is the best will get the part." And I said, "Well, that sounds fine with me." And I met Hala, and I thought, "Oh, I probably won't get any of the leads up here." But I did. I was his leading lady for the summer, and I was very proud of that, and the experience was excellent. Now, while I was up there, talent scouts from Hollywood came, and they talked to me about going to Hollywood. Well, I wasn't too sure about going out to Hollywood, because I had been out there after Good News with Irving Thalberg. I had a personal contract with Irving Thalberg, and I was out there, and I did Good News, and I didn't like motion pictures. I like the live audience, and I still do. I still love a live theater audience. It's so gratifying, and it's so wonderful, and you're not stopping every 2 seconds for a redo or a reshot of a scene, and you don't have to do it over and over and over and over again. So, and I guess I missed the applause too. So anyway, so finally they convinced me. They talked me, and Howard Dietz came up to see me, and Howard Dietz sent me out to California. And funny, I didn't have clothes with me, and Hala Stoddard let me borrow some of her clothes, and I had the flu when I got on the plane, because they wanted me right away, and fortunately the show I was in was closing that up at Iryton, you know. So they wanted me right away, and so I got on the plane, and I had this awful flu with the running nose and no makeup and the watery eyes and the beanie cap and everything. I had no idea what they wanted me for. It was for After the Thin Man, opposite Jimmy Stewart and Alan Marshall, and she was a very glamorous nightclub singer. And I showed up, and Howard Strickland from MGM was out there with Parsons and all the press. The new find is coming out to do the picture, you know, Howard Dietz sending a new star out. And I got off, and I had a fever, and I just looked like a little doggy that nobody wanted, you know, anything but glamorous. You know, I could see the faces, you know. And when I went in and met the producer, because they took me right to the studio, you know, when I went in and met Mr. Stromberg, he had a little bit of a twitch. Well, he had more of a twitch when he looked at me. He was a wreck. He said, "Oh, well," he said, Howard Dietz sent you out here." He said, "I can't understand this." And he said, "Well, go up to wardrobe and everything." I said, "Well, I don't feel very well." But anyway, they sent me up to wardrobe. I went into makeup, and I made a test that evening. And the test turned out beautifully. And so I played Polly in After the Thin Man. So that's how I got into pictures. Then I came back here.
Reclip you somewhere we lost her.
Okay.
There we go.
Then I came back here because I wanted to go back into live theater again. But then I went back out to California, and I did a few other pictures, and then I went over to Warner Brothers and did Swing Your Lady, Humphrey Bogart's leading lady. Can you believe it? First time he kissed a leading lady on the screen. And it was a very small part for Humphrey, too, you know. Louise Fazenda and Nat Pendleton and Alan Jenkins. And that was the first country music song, Old Apple Tree in the Orchard, with Elvira and the Weaver Brothers. And I did Hillbilly from 8th Avenue, all Apple songs, all tree songs. And so then after that, I did a few other things at Warner Brothers. And then along came the Blondies. My agent took me over to Columbia, and I tested for the part of a young housewife and a mother with Eddie Quillen. And I did not know I was testing for Blondie. Nobody told us what it was for. It was just a young housewife, you know, and I had dark hair. But I was in the kitchen ironing, so I said, well, if I'm going to be ironing, please put the iron in so I can go like that, like we do in Philadelphia, wet the iron, you know, and then iron a little bit. And so everything was working and everything was fine. And then I received the call to come in and that I was doing Blondie. So then I became a blonde. So that's the whole wretched story.
Nobody expected that the film itself would generate a series or the amount of popularity that it did.
My husband produced them. I wasn't married to him at the time, but I married him. The producer of the Blondies. He had the idea to make the Blondies into a series of films, but they didn't know how successful it would be. So they made the first one. And Harry Cohen, the head of Columbia, he couldn't understand it. He thought it was the worst thing he had ever seen. He said, "It's we're bankrupt and we're spending more money on this." And he wouldn't even come in after the first day's rushes. He never came in to see any of the morning rushes. So we went ahead and made it. We made it in 3 weeks, and I think it cost something like $175,000 to make the first Blondie. And Columbia was really financially, they were really into bankruptcy.
$175,000 in 1938.
That's right. And 3 weeks to make the picture. And so they took the picture out to Pomona. We all went out to Pomona to see the preview, and the walls came apart. The audience loved it. And it was so exciting, and they were so thrilled, and the cards were wonderful. When they got back to the studio, Harry Cohen, the head of the studio, didn't believe it. He thought somebody had rigged the cards, and he was furious. And so he decided he would take the film out, which he did. So he took Violet from the cutting department, he took George Side, the head of the cutting department, he took Mars Doloff, the head of music, he took everybody with him in his limousine, and he took the film, and he went off someplace. And we knew he was taking it, but we didn't know where he was taking it. And the same thing happened, and he came back to the studio, and then he sent me a very lovely car, which I sent back to him immediately, because I kept my little Ford. I like that better.
1938.
Oh, and that's excuse me, Bob, but the Blondie films were not included. Harry Cohen did not put them in the sales papers. The exhibitors could not buy the Blondie films from the sales sheet. And after the first Blondie was previewed, and they knew that they had a hit on their hands, and they were going into the next Blondie, they were able to move Angels Have Wings, all the big productions that they had done with all the stars that were not box office successes. The exhibitors had to take one of those before they could get a Blondie. But the one they bought was really the Blondie. And they got the other at a cheaper rate, you know. And the Blondies pulled Columbia out of bankruptcy. $12 million the first 6 or 7 weeks that the first Blondie was out.
How does it feel when you're part
I
of
didn't make that money.
Oh, I understand. I understand that. But to be responsible for something.
Well, it wasn't just me.
I realize that.
You know, it's never any one person. One person can be an inspiration, but one person doesn't do everything. It has to be cooperative. It has to be something that everybody does together. That's when you have a big success.
But if it was for the family, was the production unit, the performers especially, were you also like a family?
We sure were, and that's what was picked up by the camera. Camera's a very strange thing, as you have taught your children, I'm sure. The camera magnifies. It picks up on things. It measures a person's intelligence. You can see them on the screen. I shouldn't be saying this because sometimes the shots are so terrible of me that I shouldn't be giving away secrets. But no, it really does. And for instance, there are great stars in the live entertainment world. Ethel Merman absolutely sparkled on the stage. She was great on the stage. She, with the camera, the magnification of the camera lens, that it was too much. Her personality was so big it could never be caught by that camera lens because it would magnify it and would get distorted. So she was never the big success in films that she was on the stage. That's happened to a lot of people. A lot of people who are not successful on the stage are simply fantastic in film because the camera magnifies and gives them a bigger personality than they have in real life on a live theater.
There's more to come next week as we present the conclusion to this delightful presentation. Right now, though, I'd like you to join me as we get down the hallway and take a look at what's coming up here at CINEKYD.
Hi, I'm John Bethard, and this week at CINEKYD's Family Movie Night, we will present Bud Abbott and Lou Costello in the 1941 classic, Hold That Ghost. Bud and Lou return as their usual straight-faced bumbling characters, get them into more trouble than they're worth, and the audience more laughter than they can stand. For ticket information, call 659-4696. Doors open at 7 and the show begins at 7:30. Mark?
Thank you, John. And if you are coming to the movies this Saturday night, try and get here a little early. You'll find me standing by the ticket booth. And if you're one of the first 10 people to say to me, "You light up my life," you're going to get a free flashlight. So remember, Abbott and Costello and Hold That Ghost, and a free flashlight if you're one of the first 10 people to tell me that I light up your life. I'll see you there.
I sincerely hope that you'll be able to join us for one of the family movie nights, or better yet, if there is someone in our viewing audience who's interested in video production, filmmaking, radio, any one of the various areas of communication, what I'd like you to do is consider being a part of the CINEKYD family. It's as easy as dialing the telephone. You simply give us a call, and the number is 659-4696. What we'll do is arrange to provide you with a tour of the facilities and an opportunity to meet the staff. Having done that, then you too can go behind the cameras or in front of the cameras and be a part of this show. In the weeks to come, we'll be introducing a wide array of brand new segments. And it would be even more special if you were a part of those shows. So stay with us each and every week at this time on this cable channel. Until next week then, this is Bob Clark. Good night and God bless.